Lots of excellent legacy players don't share their gameplay because they think it's too time consuming, but content sharing is really good for the community and for yourself to improve, to share a lines of play and get input for other players. But the problem is if you take like 2 or 3 hours to record an MTGO league and then you edit it, you take out the pauses, or if you misspeak, then can easily take 2 or 3 times that much time, and then you have a whole workday of 8 hours. And if you've got a job or you've got a family, then you don't have that kind of time. But I found a really efficient solution how to produce high quality content in a short amount of time, and I want to share it with you. First, of course, you need a computer, but it doesn't need to be powerful. Even my €280 laptop can encode video in real time just fine with the tools I show here. But if you want to provide maximum enjoyment for your listeners, which of course you don't have to if you share it for free, but I just have pride in my work and I enjoy putting out high quality content, and I think the audio part is the most noticeable part for the listeners. So I really like having a good microphone, and I really like a condenser microphone. So condenser microphones, they're not great if you're like a musician and this drops on the stage all the time, or you're singing and there are lots of instruments in the background. But if you're just doing speech content like I do, I think a condenser mic is really, really good. So here I have the Rode NT1A, which I just bought it once and I have it for many, many years, and I think I will have it for many, many years. So it was like €180. But it was well worth it for me. For example, you can buy it at a bundle where you have the cable and like dust bag. And I also have here a pop filter. So if you have plosives like pep, 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 and you don't have the pop filter, then it sounds really bad. For example, I can go around it. Der klapperige poppige, peppige Pappplakate an die klapperige Kapellwand. Then you notice that this was without the pop filter, and now I do it with the pop filter. Der klapperige poppige, peppige Pappplakate an die klapperige Kapellwand, which was German. So you notice that the pop protection is really good for the plosives, which are the explosive sounds. And yeah, I really, really can recommend, if you want to buy a high quality microphone and you don't know which one and you don't have one already, then my personal advice is to go for the Rode NT1A. However, because this is professional grade gear, which is not like with the integrated USB converter or something, you need an audio interface. But I really like this because with this modular approach, like if your cable breaks, you just buy a new cable. If your pop filter breaks, you just buy a new pop filter. If the USB part breaks, then you buy a new USB stuff, right? So I really like this modular approach. Then you need an audio interface to connect the XLR port because your main board does not have a connector for that. So you put it here. It starts at like €90 for the excellent Focusrite Scarlett ones. Here I have a 2i2 with 2 inputs, but if you only have a single microphone, you can also just buy the Scarlett Solo. And after you connect it and you do a sound check, you can tweak the gain setting, so it should be loud enough, because if it's too quiet, people cannot hear you. Or I mean, you can also artificially increase it in software, but it's extra steps, and I like just making the stuff in maximum quality first, then you have less work later, and also the quality is always best if you have good input, but it should not be too loud. So if it's orange, it's dangerous, and if it's red, it's clipping, and this sounds really, really bad. So I can clip here. Let's increase this gain too much, blah, 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 blah. And now it's clipping, right? So let's put it back to normal levels. And here it's really important if you have a condenser mic to activate the phantom power, and the old version which I have, it has this really bright red knob, so it's hard to not see. So it sucks if you record a 3-hour leak and you forget to turn on the phantom power. So it's always good to do a sound check first. With the new ones it's easier to oversee because they just have a little green light on the button, but here the old one has this one, and the old version here also has those nice mechanical switches instead of the buttons. So I set it here to line input. And I can also really recommend turning on direct monitoring. What this means is that while you are speaking, you are listening to yourself. It takes some getting used to, but in the end, it helps with better speaking. And you noticed I'm not an expert in speaking, especially in English, but I just try to get better at it. And I think listening to yourself helps. However, if you have a software solution, not a low latency hardware one, then you get it later, and this is really difficult. I cannot speak. Sometimes maybe you notice it, maybe you're on a Zoom call and by some mistake someone is not using headphones but normal speakers. And then it may happen that you hear your own voice, but on a delay, and this is so distracting, super distracting. So that's why I like the direct monitoring here directly from your audio interface. And then you can put in your headphones here. If they are 3.5 millimeter, you need an adapter, but there should be one. If you have a good headphone, they should have an adapter for, I think, 6.125 millimeter or something like this, which is also more sturdy. So I just like having this on to protect the headphone jack, also because of the small 3.5 ones, they break often. And in my case, I have an external headphone amplifier, and I use this knob here for my own listening volume. But if you have something with a more reasonable, like up to 250 ohm, then you can just use this knob here. And I think that covers the audio interface. Oh, and also, like, you might think, well, it's like 90 euro more, it's so much money. But for me, it's well worth it because it has several functions. So I connect a microphone to it. It's also an external sound card, and I can also plug my speakers to it, so I don't have like cheap USB speakers, but studio monitor speakers, which are also not expensive, but they have the big, also I think I don't know, TLS inputs. So you can just buy cheap professional grade audio equipment, and in the long run it's much longer lasting and higher quality than if you buy like consumer stuff which doesn't sound as good and is also breaks more easily. And then it also helps me connect the headphone amplifier and so on. So I think it's really cool to have such an audio interface to it, and often you can buy it as a bundle with your microphone, or like microphone and audio interface and prop protection or whatever. Okay, now we install some free and open source software. So OBS Studio for recording and Avidemux Max for cutting and merging of the videos. So you can just go to the websites and download them for your operating system, which is probably Windows if you're using Magic Online. But if you're somehow using like Mac OS with a virtual machine or Linux, you can get it for those operating systems as well. But I'm always feeling a bit dangerous if I download and install some executables. So if you're on Mac OS and Linux, you can just install it probably with your operating system's package manager. And many people don't know it, but Windows 11 has one as well, which is called winget. So just open a command line prompt and you can type winget install, for example, OBS, and then you get OBS Studio. In my case, I already have it installed, but in your case, you would get a prompt to install it. And you can also install Avidemux Max like it. However, in my case here right now, I only get version 2.8. So let's cancel this because the newest one is 2.8.1. So in this case, I trust the web page enough and I download and install the newest 2.8.1, which has a bit more functionality from the official page of the vendor. Alright, now we go into OBS Studio, and you will probably see that the colors are really strange and that it records itself. It's because it's here on the same monitor. Usually I have it on my second monitor, and because I have IHDR monitor, I click on Force SDR so it gets converted. So people like probably most of you on non-HDR monitors will not see it too bright, so it will convert it to the SDR colors. And then I also usually uncheck this box here, so now you should not see the mouse cursor, which is very distracting. I just enabled it before to show stuff on the Scarlett audio interface, and this should be it. So just make sure to I set this to automatic and select the correct monitor here. If you have only one monitor, you can just task switch into Magic Online, or if you have two monitors, you can also just put it on the second monitor. Now for the microphone settings, we select the correct device. This is really important, and I can really recommend to make a short sound check before we record several hours of leak with no audio. And then I like to add a compressor filter here. So I think this is the standard setting. So what this does is it compresses the voice, so the quiet parts get a bit louder or the louder parts get a bit quieter, so it has a bit more even volume. If you're more interested in the technical details, I can share some links, but I just really like having this on by default. And lastly, you can record the game sound as well, but I don't do this because a viewer found it too distracting and the others didn't complain, so I just turn it off here. Now for the video recording settings, the default settings should work fine, but I think we can optimize it a bit. So very importantly, we are not streaming, at least I'm not streaming, so ignore this. Sometimes I'm confused and choose this one by accident, and here, because I'm currently recording, this is grayed out, but here you can add your recording path, and I just use the best and newest video encoder, which in my case is here HEVC, which I think is another name for the H265, which has for the same quality up to 50% size reduction, which is really nice for archiving. But if you don't keep the files, if you just upload to YouTube and then throw it away, I guess you can also just choose the older and more compatible 264 codec, which I think also gets processed by YouTube by default. So YouTube right now seems to re-encode the HEVC to 264, but I keep the files, and also I have a graphics card, an NVIDIA 3070, which has hardware support. So this is also really nice, because this means my computer doesn't have to increase the clock speed, so the fans keep being very quiet. But yeah, my suggestion is just use the HEVC here if you can, but if you cannot do it, it's also not a problem. And it's also really important to know that this also depends on the resolution. Like I have 4K monitor, so this produces a lot of video. So if you record many hours of Magic Online, then this is several gigabytes in size, and like if you have a 1 terabyte SSD, it fills up very quickly. But if you just have full HD, then the file sizes are much smaller. Now, something very specific to Magic Online is that we don't have a much of fast movement, so we can just set the frames per second to 30, which would be way too stuttery if we were to record some first-person shooter or something like that. So yeah, if you record different content, be sure to not forget to put it back, but I just always only record Magic Online or text-based stuff, so I just put it at 30, so we save more space and time by just recording at 30 FPS. And also, because we only have a single microphone, we can also set it to mono channel, and I think sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz is more than enough for the human voice, especially a deep one such as me. But even if you have a very high voice, this should be more than enough. And sorry if I have to close it and open it the whole time. It's because I cannot start and stop the video while I'm doing stuff in OBS. So now it's really important to have hotkeys. So for me, I think this is a default, but I'm not sure. So for me, start recording is F9, stop recording F10. If you have a keyboard of a laptop, you may set it to FN lock or something to enable those keys, or you don't have to press the function keys. And then F7 and F8 for me is pause and unpause recording. And because I use Firefox browser and sometimes I want to show something in Firefox, I also go to About Config and set reader pause on load to false, because otherwise pressing F9 will show reader mode and throw the design away of the stuff I want to show. And one more setting is here. For some reason, I have to go into output mode advanced, go to recording. And for some reason, it was set for me as constant bitrate. But I think because Magic Online has so many static images, I think it's just too wasteful if you have a high constant bitrate. So I just set it here to variable bitrate with target quality. And I just set it to target quality 18. And maximum bit rate of 10,000 kilobit per second, which I think should be more than enough for Magic Online because of the high amount of static images and low amount of movement. However, if you go into the recommended settings of YouTube, they recommend like 35 to 45 megabit per second for those frame rates here. You see it's a difference for 4K video, but I think for Magic Online 10 megabit per second is more than enough. And we save a lot of space on our storage drives. Now this was quite a bit of setup, but we only need to do this once, and now we have a really efficient solution in place to start recording our first leak. So we fire up OBS Studio on our second monitor. We check that the correct monitor is shown here, of course, because otherwise you cannot see it. I put it top to bottom, but normally you have it on two different monitors. We activate the phantom power. If you have a condenser mic, we check the sound levels here. It shouldn't be too low and shouldn't be too high. Here, for example, we see the maximum is a bit in the red, but it's still all right. We check everything and then we can press F9 to start the recording, do a deck check, put everything to maximum size because some people don't have 4K displays. Many have like 1440p or even full HD, and I can recommend everyone to buy a large high resolution monitor because it will change your computer life. It's so much better. But people still have full HD displays or sometimes look at it at your video on the phone. So just put everything as large as you can, and then when you're finished with the deck tag, you can just press F10 and you have your separate file, and then you do the same for each of the matches for a leak. And then you can also, if nothing is going on, press F7 and then press F8 to unpause. Don't forget that part. And at the end you have a few files. And now that we have this, I go into the file manager, into the folder where I set the output of OBS, and I like to name the videos with the current date and then the deck and then the leak and then -M0 for intro and then -M1 to 5 for the different matches. And you can also add the opponent's deck, but you don't have to. And now that we have this, we merge them all together in Avidemux. So now we open Avidemux and we just drag and drop all the files in the correct order, which is where it's helpful that we have M0 for the deck tag and M1, M2, M4 and M5 for the different matches. We check that everything is there, deck tag, match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we edit it for 5 hours. No, of course not. We skipped this step because we just pressed F7 and F8 to pause and unpause. And of course, there are always too long pauses or you misspeak a bit, but you know, who cares? Like, I think at least for me, I'd rather have 4 weekly unedited Echo Baronin videos than 1 a week or like yeah, or like one like one meta overview every week, then just one every month, even if the one monthly has a music intro and fade in, fade out. But of course, like if you love video editing, if this is fun for you, then of course you can do it, but I'd rather have 3 times or 4 times as much content. And now we can save it. So let's say we set here HVAC as our video output, and then we can just merge everything together and save it. However, we see, because we have 4K video, this takes a long time. So a 2-hour video, before we had, of course, all the time to do it in real time, because OBS just has to do it in real time. But now we would prefer 2-hour videos to compress much faster. But even with my computer with a 10900K, which is like, of course it's not the newest generation, but it's still a very capable processor, and a 3070 graphics card, it's still 2 hours. Let's look at the task manager. So the CPU has a lot of work to do here. Even my 10 cores and 20 threads and video encoding is really multi-threading efficient. They are really used a lot, even though the GPU does a lot as well here, video encode, but it's a lot of work to encode video. However, there's a nice trick which I think only Avidemux can do, or at least I don't know any other tool which can do it. We can just set video output and audio output to copy, so it does not do any re-encoding, so it's lossless, because it knows, okay, all the data has the same codec in the same size, because it's from OBS Studio and we didn't change the settings. And it can just merge the files together. So let's do test MKV, and it is amazing. In a few seconds instead of in a few hours, we saved several gigabytes of 4K video. And the best thing is, if there's really something, maybe the postman came and you forgot to pause and you have 5 minutes of silence, you can still cut it, but you cannot cut it every frame. You just can cut at, I think it's the keyframes. So if we do here, next keyframe up and down, we have the hotkey control and page up and control and page down. So it's maybe not millisecond perfect, or like one frame is around 33 milliseconds in our case, because we have 30 frames per second, so we cannot cut at every frame. But for most cases this is enough. If we really have to cut something, we can do that, and we should still be able to save it here, test MKV, and it's still possible, because video works that it saves like whole images once in a while, and then it just saves the difference to save on space, because otherwise video files would be even more gigantic. So this is a really cool and time and space efficient tool, this Avidemux. I like it a lot. Of course, now we cannot do like crossfades. I mean, it has filters, but I don't use it, because if you do like fades and all kinds of effects, then you cannot do it. You have to re-encode it. Then you need a powerful computer and to wait several hours, but this skips it completely. So we save like 7 hours of work by not editing and by just merging it together. And now we just have to upload the file to YouTube. So we select the file, though this is just an example file, and now you can set the standards here. Because I used to do Commander videos in German, I still have the old text. I need to change this in the settings, but you can just use something else. For example, I have an old blue-black tempo leak here, so I just can reuse everything, and then I can give it a new name, like super new UB tempo leak with 5 tamios or something. And then you put the timestamps here. You don't have to do it, but I think it's really nice for people who want to look at or maybe they only want a matchup against Cephalid Breakfast, so they can just skip. So the way it works with YouTube is you just put the timestamp here as a text and it will automatically make a link out of it, and then you can just say no, it's not for kids. And or you can also, if you want, have tags here, which really helps people find it, but I just reuse the same text. So I don't know why it's set to English. This is a mistake, so it's German, and I just make a few tags here so it's much easier to find, and then we just upload it, and you can set it to public, but of course in this case we just want to save it here as a draft, and we delete it because it was just a test. And for a real video we also want to do a thumbnail. And for the thumbnails I use Canva, so I just reuse some old templates. So I like to do something in the background. I think I took heavy inspiration, e.g. stole the idea, I think, from Be Excellent, who has like 2 cards in the background, and Canva has some really nice font options, and then you can just write, okay, legacy, UB, tempo, and write a date in, and maybe change one of the cards. For example, here I want to have it with a Nether Golf, and then you export it here as share, and then you say download. And I think most of the time you need to do it with JPEG because the size is often too large for YouTube with the file size. And then you can just set it as a thumbnail, and then you're done. And I think it's like 15 minutes or 20 minutes instead of 7 hours of post-leak recording time. So this is super efficient, and you can record and publish your stuff in a high quality. And yeah, I'm really interested. What do you think? Maybe you say, Kurdi, your stuff sucks. Your voice is not good enough. You need to, like, I don't know. Maybe you say, yeah, you need to edit it. I only watch heavy edited stuff with intro and outro, and I don't want any pauses, and it's enough if it's one video a year. Or maybe you say, no, this is great, I want to use it too. Or maybe you have questions for specific parts, like why compression or something. So I'm really interested in if it helps you and whether you like it or not. And also, like, please give me constructive feedback how I can improve in the future. So now I'm stumbling over my own voice, but yeah, I hope you like it, and see you later.